There's an absurd amount of different weapons in Hypixel Skyblock. Even just looking through my museum, so many different weapons that I'd literally not really heard of before. And for the most part, there's usually a reason for this. Considering us Hypixel Skyblock players find the best weapons and just basically reuse them in a loop, depending on what stage you are in the game and so on. But today we're going to be testing some of those weapons that, to be honest, I looked at and thought I've never heard of that. Doesn't mean that everybody watching this video has never heard of these items. They're in the game, they're not secret items, you know, everyone can kind of access them. But I think it should be pretty fun. Now, the first weapon we're going to be taking a look at is the giant cleaver. Now, the giant cleaver is a weapon that I had in the museum, but to be honest, can never really remember putting it in the museum, and I didn't know there was a giant cleaver. I know there's a cleaver, and I think there's a super cleaver. I didn't know there was a giant one, though. There's probably one in between too. Well, here's the regular cleaver. Here's the super cleaver, hyper cleaver, and the giant cleaver. This whole time, it's been hiding in this dungeon shop. Now, it's just me probably being completely and utterly oblivious, and I'm sure a lot of you who play dungeons are like, you are an idiot, and this is obviously a pretty common weapon. But I don't think it is. I've never seen anyone using a giant cleaver, and to be honest, its base stats are actually quite decent. 235 base damage, 120 strength, and 120% crit damage. And of course, its ability cleave when hitting an entity monsters in a 5-block range will be hit for a portion of that damage too. So it kinda, to me, seems like a little bit of a baby Felthorn Reaper. Kinda. Well, if you're using it with a G-Drag, it's also a golden weapon, so we're getting extra strength of 100. Just before we do, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS. It gets yourself 5% off. If you watch the videos and you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so. You should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of this video. We offer slayers and dungeon carries, so if you need carries or want to carry and make some coins, make sure to join. But what sort of damage does this weapon deal? That would be kind of interesting to see. 501k? 520k? Wow, maybe we should get some stacks. Okay, and all the way up to 588k, almost 600k damage. Remember, this weapon's got no enchantments on it at all. Now, it is actually quite comparable to something like a Livid Dagger. To be honest, it might even be better than a Livid Dagger. A Livid Dagger gives 210 base damage, which is less. 60 base strength, which is less. 50 base crit damage, which is less. Of course, you get 50 bonus attack speed, and also the 100% crit chance with the Livid Dagger. That is good, and of course, you get the back hit and the right click. Like, there are perks. I think we should go ahead and buy a clean Livid Dagger and compare these two weapons, because they actually cost, well, a very similar price too. Actually, wait, no, never mind. There's no clean ones on the market, but the Giant Cleaver is 14 mil. It says the average lowest bin is 7.5 mil, so maybe 14 mil is too expensive. In that case, at 7 mil, it would be comparable to a Livid Dagger. Well, who would have thought? The Livid Dagger, that's a back hit. Let's do a regular hit. 446k, and the Giant Cleaver, 575k. Who would have thought on a one-hit damage basis, the Giant Cleaver would quite comfortably out-damage the Livid Dagger? That's pretty interesting. I mean, sure, you've got to consider with the Livid Dagger, you can right-click and throw your dagger. But there is quite the sizable cooldown. And you can back-hit and do way more damage. But that's not consistent either. But you also do get 50% bonus attack speed and 100 crit chance, which is relatively easily obtainable regardless. How about comparing it to something like an Aspect of the Dragons? This is 225 base damage and 100 strength. Well, we can already tell that, I mean, the Giant Cleaver is going to be better. Like, way better. But for the sake of testing, Aspect of the Dragons, 473k damage, and the Giant Cleaver, 570. I don't know. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know this weapon was in the game. I can't lie. Although that's probably because I've not really spent an awful lot of time in the dungeon hub. Anyway, moving on. I do want to just quickly kind of try out the cleave ability just before we move on. Oh, there's two zombies right here. Okay, that kind of worked. We dealt 479k damage to the second zombie. Cool. Now we can move on. But just do remember, just quickly consider that probably one of the reasons we were dealing so much more damage with this Giant Cleaver is because we had the 100 strength buff from the G-Drag. So maybe that's it. But that's a perk of the Giant Cleaver, you know? Although I don't know why you would use this with a G-Drag. If you had a G-Drag, surely you'd have a better weapon. Anyway, next up we're on to the Shaman Sword. Now, of course, I've heard of this before, but I've never really looked into what it did. And maybe I did at one point and forgot, but there's probably a reason I didn't remember. So, we've got 100 base damage, 50 base strength, and 5 speed. Okay, that's fine. Not great, but still. Deal +1 damage per 50 max health. Okay. Receive -20% damage from animal mobs. Okay. Gain plus 50 combat wisdom against animal mobs. Okay. Now, is it just me or animal mobs? Okay. There's a lot of animal mobs. Wow, okay. So wait, I guess it literally is just what it says on the tin. Animal mobs. So mobs that I guess resemble animals. Or just the regular animals too. So that means obviously a wolf count. So let's go over to the wolves. Ah, okay. All the animal mobs have the little animal symbol above them. So 50 combat wisdom means that, I mean, it will be good for spawning Wolf Slayer. That's one thing. I assume it also must be good for spawning Tarantula Slayer, considering that must be an animal mob too. Tarantula's a spider. Okay, so for example, let's kill a few mobs with our Hyperion and see, okay, 48 kills with our Hyperion. Then we switch to the Shaman Sword, which is giving us 50 more combat wisdom. And... okay, 35 kills. So that's a pretty substantial change. That's kind of cool. While we're here, we might as well do one boss and get an overclock real quick. Damn it. I was going to say we can test it on spawning spiders, but these aren't animal mobs. So forget that about Spider Slayer. They're, I guess, arachne mobs instead. So what that means is, obviously, 24 kills to spawn, and using the Shaman Sword shouldn't really affect it. Should be the same, right? Yeah. So no change. So I guess it's only really good for spawning Wolf Slayer. And unfortunately for the Shaman Sword, I can't really think of any other uses for it. Whereby combat wisdom against animal mobs would actually be useful. If I'm wrong, please let me know. But I can't really think of anything. No, it could also be that the Shaman Sword is a pretty common sword to use. It's not like the cleaver where I haven't really heard of it. I've heard of the Shaman Sword, I've just never really used it. Okay, but we're going to move on to a weapon that I've genuinely never heard of. And that's a Silk Edge Sword. Now, this weapon gives a base damage of 175, base strength of 125, and base crit damage of 25. Its right-click ability Leap. Leap into the air and deal 400 damage to nearby enemies upon landing on the ground. Damaged enemies will be frozen for 1 second. So it's almost like a kind of like a ground slam sort of effect without actually ground slamming, I think. The weapon costs around about 8 million coins or so. And its base damage is nothing special at all. Like, it's fine. It's not amazing. You know, it's not surprisingly good or anything like that. But of course, like, we're not really here for that. We want to test out the right-click ability, so I guess this zombie's frozen. I think. It's a really, really weird mechanic. Okay, let's try that again. So if we leap... okay. What on earth is this? It's kind of fun, actually. Wait. Kaboom. Wait, but this guy didn't get damaged. Okay, we need to try on high health mobs. I can seriously comfortably say that this is the first time I've ever heard of a Silk Edge Sword, other than like the brief minute that I must have heard of it when I was putting it in the museum. But I really don't remember that at all. Okay, let's try this. Let's get some mobs together and let's... okay. Okay, so they're all damaged and frozen. See, everything else can move, but these guys can't, and now they can again. I mean, I'm not really seeing the point of this weapon. I can't lie to you. Like, it's kind of fun. It's kind of hard to aim because I keep overshooting, but it's also just weirdly fun in a strange sense. I don't know. I can't really explain. Yeah, I don't know. Now, I wonder how this... I have no idea. How is this even craftable? Okay, so... Silky Lichen and also Enchanted Fermented Spider Eyes. And it's an upgrade of the Leaping Sword, which makes sense. Another weapon that I've never really used. I guess it's just basically the same mechanic. By the looks of it, or very similar. Wait. Yeah. No, I think I've been doing this wrong. Do I need to wear mage armor? I mean, it's only going to increase the amount of damage that we do when we land. I don't see... yeah, 19k damage. Okay. Okay, 37k damage. Let me give it the benefit of the doubt. However, I don't really see how this helps too much, because 37k damage is not enough to do anything. Don't worry, guys. All the mobs are frozen now. Oh, one spider is anyway. Oh, I actually would never have guessed, but this weapon has been in the game since November 2019. This weapon has been in the game for 6 years. Over 6 years. Almost 6 years and 1 month. It also received some balancing changes where it got buffed not long after it was introduced, reducing its cooldown, its mana cost, and also increasing its damage and strength. In March 2021, its rarity was increased from epic to legendary. Its catacombs requirement was lowered, and fixed the Spider Essence Shop's empowered perk not applying to Silk Edge Sword. And that perk is reduces the mana cost of some movement abilities by 10%. Okay. Interesting. Just a strange item that I never knew was in the game, and it's been in the game for 6 years. So yeah, nothing new. But anyway, I think that's going to be all for today's video. I'm not saying that every single person who's ever played Hypixel Skyblock has never heard of any of these swords, because it's just not true. But I thought it was pretty interesting to look through them, and it's probably pretty apparent as to why, yeah, at least I didn't know about them. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.